So today, February 10th, a small update went out for Halo Infinite, and this update was expected to increase the priority of low pings to the servers, increase the likelihood that you'll match with players from your respective region more often, and prevent geofiltering in matchmaking. And with this update, 343 also put out a forum post discussing latency and geofiltering, and they put out a developer blog that discusses melee, shot registration, and desync issues. Now, like usual with these blogs, I'm not going to discuss everything that was touched on here, but I will link the forum post and the blog below if you want to check them out yourself. So here's the thing. In this blog and in this forum post, 343, they explain why these things happen. They explain what geofiltering does. They explain why your shots don't register sometimes, why your melees don't register sometimes, why you get shot when you're behind a wall. And they really do break it down and discuss the fine details of why these things happen. And if I were to give a rough summary of why these things occur, I'd say it's a result of the delay in information being shared between a player's client and the server. And that's a problem all online games have to deal with, although some deal with it better than others. The actual game client and the server have to communicate with each other, and it's not instantaneous. There's always some amount of delay there. And like I said in the blog 343, they do go in depth and explain all the technical reasons why these things are happening. And you know, that's what I've been saying I want 343 to do. I want them to explain why these things are happening. I want them to be more transparent. But although they did provide a detailed explanation, they did avoid some other elephants in the room, I would say, and I felt like there was a lack of self-accountability. You know, for some time now, after watching how 343 handles certain situations and the statements that they issue, it seems like they lack self-accountability. Like, a lot of the time, they are shifting blame. Like something recently, back on January 28th, 343 put out a forum post, and this is something kind of small, but regarding some of the Cyber Showdown cosmetics and how they weren't perfectly centered on a Spartan's helmet, 343 said this: eagle-eyed players noticed these two armor effects weren't absolutely perfectly aligned with their Spartan's helmets, spurring some lighthearted memes. Don't worry though, we've busted out our levels and protractors and we'll get these centered when Season 2 rolls around. That statement to me and many others came off as a little condescending. Like, I'm sorry people pointed out the imperfections with your game, albeit this is a small issue. Like, all you had to say was these cosmetics were not centered and we're fixing that in a future update. Like, that's it. Like, no need to act like it's just these eagle-eyed perfectionists that realized these cosmetics were off-center. No, it really wasn't that hard to see at all. And it's not their fault for noticing it. No, you guys fucked up. You did. I know this is a small issue, and you could say it's kind of nitpicky, but people noticed it, they pointed it out, and that mistake is on 343. Now, when it comes to these recent updates discussing latency, geofiltering, shot registration issues, melee issues, desync, when I read through them, it seemed like more of them saying these are things all online games have to deal with, and less of, hey, we fucked up. Like when it comes to geofiltering in Halo Infinite, and for those of you who don't know, 343, they explained geofiltering as it's kind of like blocking servers, but not exactly. Like in games that do allow regional server selection, like MCC, if you deselect servers, you just won't get those servers when you're searching for a match. But in Halo Infinite, as 343 describes it, the geofiltering only takes effect after the match is already formed and the server has been selected. And so after that match is formed, the player who is geofiltering can block the server that was chosen for that match and force the game to be played on their preferred server. And that can obviously result in bad connections for other players in the game. But first off, I want to make it real clear that I do not believe the only reason people were experiencing bad connections is because people were geofiltering. No. I think the reason people were geofiltering is because they were getting put into games with 200 fucking ping. And yeah, people geofiltering will exacerbate that problem, but it's not what caused that problem. For many people, geofiltering was just the solution for getting put into high latency games. So in the forum post, after 343 finished explaining what geofiltering is and how it affects the game, they said this: "As we touched on above, we can't let geofiltering continue because of how it degrades the experience for our players. So earlier today, we made an update to our online services that should prevent geofiltering players from searching in matchmaking. If our services detect that a player is geofiltering, that player will receive a message saying, 'No ping to our data centers detected.' Once a player removes their geofilter, this message will go away and they should have no issue queuing into matchmaking." So, even if geofiltering was the reason that players were getting into high latency games, then that problem would be a result of 343's negligence. Because according to 343, their services now prevent geofiltering. Okay, well, it should have prevented it from the start. But again, like I said, I do not think geofiltering was the sole reason that people were experiencing bad connections. People geofiltering was just a result of being placed into high ping games. Now, to those of you who do not feel like this issue is a result of 343's carelessness to prevent geofiltering from the start, well, that would be like launching a game without an anti-cheat and then saying it's not the developer's fault that people are cheating. Like, no, if cheating in a game is rampant, yeah, that problem lies with the developers for having a shit anti-cheat. Like, as far as I'm aware, Halo Infinite does have an anti-cheat, but it's obviously not very good with how often players are matching cheaters. So because of how common cheating is in Halo Infinite right now, yeah, that issue is 343's fault as well. So if and when 343 do improve their anti-cheat for Halo Infinite, I'm just gonna say, cool, but it should have been like that from the fucking start. Especially when you've had this much time to develop the game. Now, in the more detailed developer blog discussing desync and shots not registering, melees not registering, they explain why these things happen, and they say these are things that all online games have to deal with. But the thing that they do not address is why some of these issues were not nearly as severe in other Halo games, or in other games in general. Like, many people agree that the shot registration issues, the desync, and especially the melee issues were not nearly as severe in past Halo games. And so, that's really what I want to know. Why the fuck is it so much worse in the Halo game of 2021 that was in development for 6 years? That's what I want to know. Why are you talking about UI limitations when adding playlist in the Halo game of 2021? Those are the elephants in the room that they don't address. They talk about latency and desync and shots not registering in Halo Infinite and why all that stuff happens, but is that really acceptable when there's so many other games, other Halo games, where these issues are a lot less severe? Like, when I play Valorant, I'd say on average my ping is around 20, and I don't think I've ever been in a game where my ping was higher than 40. But in Halo Infinite, I get put into 100 plus ping games. And this was happening back when the game first came out, back on November 15th, back when there were still 100,000 people playing the game. So that is my main problem with these updates they provided today. They explained why these things happen in Halo Infinite, but let's talk a little bit more about why they're so much worse in Halo Infinite than other games. Many people agree that desync in Halo Infinite is way worse than desync in any other Halo game. And I do experience getting shot behind cover, even on low ping games. And at the end of this blog, they did a short little Q&A where they surprisingly touched on observer/theater mode issues So the question was, why do my shots appear to miss when I watch back in theater film / observer mode? Basically talking about how in theater mode and observer mode, although it's worse in theater mode, how your reticle will not be on a player you are shooting at. 343 said, this is due to the latency compensation the server does to ensure shots land correctly. Remember that when the server receives a shot, it rewinds time for that shot, so that shot is performed in the same way as the client fired it. This means that shots in observer / theater mode will appear to miss, as we don't rewind time in these modes. We have future work planned that will perform the latency compensation when viewing a player in first person, but unfortunately, due to the way the system works, third person in theater / observer will always be slightly off. Again, the higher the latency of the shooter, the more significant the error will appear. So again, they explain why this occurs in Halo Infinite and why it looks like you're missing shots in theater mode or observer mode. But the explanation that I would like, and I think would provide more clarity, is why was this not an issue in Halo 3, Halo Reach, and I don't think it was an issue in Halo 4 either. Why was the theater mode from Halo 3 in 2007, 14 fucking years ago, so much better than the theater mode in Halo Infinite? That's what I want to know. Same thing goes for the shot registration and melee issues and the desync. Why are all these things so much worse in Halo Infinite than they were in past Halo games? And if the answer is, oh, with Halo Infinite we use a different system and things work like this, well, my follow-up question would be, why? Why is that the system you use now? And why is that better? Or why do you think that's better? Because clearly something like theater mode is far inferior in Halo Infinite than it was in past Halo games. Now, although I've been saying 343 did not explain why some of these things might be worse in Halo Infinite than it is in other games, other Halo games, there was one thing they said that could be looked at as a reason for why desync and other things are worse in Halo Infinite. And that's this right here, where they say, in Halo Infinite, our players can move very fast at full sprint. A Spartan moves at approximately 8.5 meters per second. When grappling, this is increased to a massive 24 meters per second. The latency that you will experience from a shot is a product of the following calculation. So they explain how the speed at which a player is moving has an influence on the amount of latency a player will experience. So like if you're walking behind a wall and a player snipes you before you get behind the wall, on your screen you might see yourself die before you got behind that wall, which is how it should be. But if you go to sprint behind a wall, where you are now moving faster, if a player snipes you before you get behind that wall, on your screen, it might appear that you died after you were already behind that wall. So basically, 343 just handed us a new argument for why sprint should not be in Halo. So I guess thank you for that. Yeah, get sprint the fuck out of the game. It causes more latency. Especially super sliding in Halo Infinite. Oh my god, think about how fast you move when you're super sliding. Get that shit out too. Classic Halo, no sprint, less latency. So get sprint and super slides and all that shit the fuck out of the game. Many people did not want that shit in the game to begin with, and as 343 explains, a player moving fast can result in increased latency. So get it the fuck out of the game. Well, to be more accurate, your movement speed itself does not increase your latency on the server, but as a result of players moving faster, it may appear that you're getting shot behind walls more often. Because something else 343 mentioned in this blog post was that the server prioritizes the shooter. So that means on the shooter screen, if they land a shot on another player, the game will favor what the shooter saw on their screen, even if the other player's screen shows them behind a wall. They say there are multiple ways that you can solve the problem of latency compensation, but in Halo we choose to favor the shooter. Practically, this means that whatever happened on the shooter screen, the server endeavors to honor. That means whenever a player sees themselves hitting a target, our system does its best to give them the hit on the server. But then they go on to discuss how the server doesn't always give them the hit because this game has shot registration issues. And I am curious, why does the server favor what the shooter sees on their screen? Like, I don't really understand that. Like, yeah, on his screen he hit the shot, but on the other player's screen, he might not have. On the other person's screen, they may have been behind a wall. So, like, did we just flip a fucking coin and say, all right, let's favor the shooter, fuck the other guy? But even though 343 explains that the game tries its best to honor what the shooter sees on their screen, I have seen clips of people shoot the air, like a player runs behind a wall and the shooter fires at the air and the shooter still gets the kill. So I have seen clips of on the shooter screen they don't even hit the shot, but the game gives them the kill. And with that, we've come to the end of the video. Again, I do appreciate 343 explaining things. You know, that's what I want. I want an explanation for why things are the way they are. But let's not avoid the big and obvious questions, like why are so many of these things much worse in Halo Infinite, the Halo game of 2021 developed by a AAA studio for 6 fucking years. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.